I'm here with Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Alexander, we now have confirmation that U.S. President Trump will be meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin on the sidelines of the G20 in Japan. From what we know, it's going to be about an hour-long meeting. Let's see here. We have Kremlin aide Yuri Ushakov, who has said that the two will discuss, and I quote, issues of strategic stability, numerous regional conflicts, including Iran, Syria, North Korea, Venezuela, and Afghanistan. What do you make of this news?
I think this is good news. I mean, I'm going to say a few things. I mean, an hour is a long time for two leaders to meet at one of these G20 summits. I mean, it's not a proper summit. I mean, it's not a summit like you would have when, it's just the two leaders by themselves with their teams and they're able to meet for a whole day, for example. But nonetheless, it's more than just a chance encounter. And of course, they do communicate with each other. They speak to each other on the phone from time to time. They will have prepared their positions very carefully. There will be the advanced teams going from Russia and the US, and they'll be meeting and they'll be So, I mean, both Trump and Putin will go into that meeting with some knowledge already of what the other person is going to say. But there is no substitute for these personal meetings. And I think at a time like this, when we have the situation in the Persian Gulf looking so dangerous, where we have so much tension in Europe with, American deployments, where relations between the US and China are becoming so fraught, and where there's talk about, there's the crisis in Venezuela. There's so many things that are there to talk about. The fact that these two leaders, who are still leaders of the two most powerful military countries, are meeting and talking to each other, that has to be a good thing. And I hope that this time they'll be left to talk properly to each other, and that we won't have this chorus of people in Europe and in the United States, looking all the time for this great conspiracy between Trump and Putin. And, is Putin somehow controlling Trump? All this nonsense that we've had to listen to for the last 2 years. Mueller has reported, he said there was no collusion, there was no conspiracy between the Trump and the Russians. So let's leave these two presidents finally to get on with a proper discussion between each other. That might be too much to hope, but at least Trump himself can say, look, it's all behind me now. I can talk to the Russians. It's in the interests of the United States that I should. There's lots of things to discuss, and now's my chance to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm with you there, Alexander, but I think that CNN and MSNBC are going to, go down the same route that they've been going down for the last 2 years. Putin controls Trump and collusion and obstruction, but who cares? I think I've gotten so sick of CNN and MSNBC and whatever, they have to say on this issue that we just don't care. I think the most important part is, as you said, there's a lot of trouble spots right now. Yes. What do you think are the top 3 issues that these two leaders need to address? The top 3.
Right, Syria. I mean, the fact that, the Syrian situation remains unresolved. So, Donald Trump announced, as we all remember last year, that he was going to pull out troops from Syria. They haven't been pulled out. Putin wants, I think, to resolve the situation in Syria. He wants to see Idlib province returned to the control of the Syrian government. He wants US troops out of Syria. He wants the Kurdish issue to be resolved. And I think he will be saying to Donald Trump, look, it's not in your interest to stay in Syria. These jihadi militants that you dislike so much are not worth fighting over. And if you have concerns about the presence of the Iranians in Syria, we can sort that out with you diplomatically. The second thing he will want to discuss with Trump, obviously, is the situation in the Persian Gulf. And I think Trump will want to discuss that too. And I think that Trump is beginning to understand that he's been maneuvered into a corner on Iran by his own people, by Bolton and Pompeo and by Pence, and that it's not in his interests to start a war between the United States and Iran over a Iranian nuclear program that the US intelligence community is itself reporting doesn't exist. So I think he's going to want to talk about this issue with Putin with a way to trying to find some kind of off-ramp out of this mess. Not easy to see how that can happen at the moment, but maybe there will be some sort of initial discussions. Then, of course, there's Venezuela. No doubt they'll have some things to say about that, but I don't think Donald Trump is very interested in Venezuela, and I think we'll see that the Russians will, try and de-escalate that crisis. But there's also the overarching issue of arms control. Right. Which has been talked about many times. The Russians are now pressing ahead with their hypersonic missile developments. They've just unrolled another weapon system, the S-500 anti-aircraft. Well, it's not just anti-aircraft, it's anti-missile defense system. It can apparently hit targets in space. So the Russians' bargaining position is getting stronger all the time. At the same time, they don't want to see an uncontrolled arms race. They'll be talking about how, after the INF Treaty, the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty, was cancelled, how they can bring some kind of arms control back on track. And I think the Russians will be floating with Trump again this issue of trying to bring some kind of control to all this cyber warfare that is now apparently going on. The Russians have been talking for several years now about the need to agree limits on cyber warfare and to set these out in some kind of international agreement or treaty that will involve the US and China and other powers. And the US has been very resistant to this idea up to now, but I think Putin will maybe in a position to say, look, this is all getting out of hand. Let's at least talk about this problem and see whether we can come to some kind of conclusion over it. And we will see what happens. At least finally, after these 2 years of crisis and that summit meeting in Helsinki, which seemed to promise a lot, but never amounted to anything, at least they're talking again.
You seem to explain a lot just now from a Russian Putin perspective. Can you look at a little bit on the Trump side? What do you think Trump is looking to get out of this meeting? What is the U.S.? What is the U.S. looking to get out of this meeting with Russia?
I think for Donald Trump, firstly, he's always wanted better relations with Russia, and I think Russia's a country which he's visited and he rather liked, and he doesn't see it as a threat, and he sees it as a huge business opportunity. He's talked in the past of the US investing in Russia, and there's lots of areas where the US could invest in Russia very effectively. In some ways, they're very similar economies. They're both big, continental, resource-rich economies, and the business culture, it'll surprise some people for me when I say this, is not that different in some ways. So I think Donald Trump always thinks in those terms, and I think he'll be looking at that. One thing he knows is that Russia is not a country that has been taking advantage of the US economically and commercially in the way that China and Japan and Germany and Mexico and even Canada, in Donald Trump's mind, have done. So there's always that. But I think there's also something else, which is that for Donald Trump, his major concern, the big geopolitical and commercial rival for him is China. And if he can do some things with the Russians to try and pry them away, if only to a small degree, from the Chinese, he will want to try and do that. So if he can sort of talk about arms control with the Russians, talk about economic relations with the Russians, try and engage the Russians politically and diplomatically, so as to sort of tell the Russians, well, look, you do actually have other options. You shouldn't just look to the Chinese. I think he will look to them to do that. And of course, he will also look to the Russians to help him, as I said, with this mess he's got himself into, or rather he's been maneuvered into with Iran. Now, I have to say, I personally think that the Russians are not going to be very attracted to any offers Donald Trump makes, which are intended to pull them away from China. But having said that, I mean, from Donald Trump's point of view, it's at least worth a try. And I think that's how he thinks.
Finally, Alexander, what other things are you keeping an eye out for during this G20 outside of Trump, Russia, Trump, Putin meeting? Is there anything else that people should be on the lookout for?
The other big meeting that's going to happen, if it happens, is between Trump and Xi Jinping, because I mean they've got lots to talk about with the trade deals, the trade war now in full swing, with the Huawei business in deep crisis, with the conflict in the South China Sea, with North Korea and its missile program and its nuclear program and all that now in stalemate. So there's lots that Trump and Xi have to talk about. But at the moment, it's Xi who seems to be unwilling to talk to Trump, because I think Xi feels that he talked to Trump an awful lot. He went to meet Trump shortly after Trump became president, coming to Trump's home in Florida and having almost one of the very first summit meetings with Trump. And I feel he feels disappointed in Trump up to now. So I think Xi is going to be difficult to agree a meeting with. But I suspect eventually some kind of a meeting will happen. Now, there are going to be other meetings. There's going to be meetings between Trump and Putin, Trump and Merkel, which I suspect is not going to go very well, by the way. There's going to be because I mean, Trump is now
he doesn't like Merkel.
He doesn't like Merkel. And I mean, he's got issues with the Germans over car exports, over Nord Stream 2, though I think Trump probably realizes that Nord Stream 2 is now going to happen. There's going to be meetings between Putin and Merkel, which are going to be focused on Ukraine and the crisis in Ukraine. There's some first glimmers of talk of a meeting between Putin and Theresa May, with the British perhaps trying to find a way back into some kind of conversation with the Russians, perhaps realizing that this very hard line that they've been pursuing against the Russians isn't doing the British any good. I mean, the British have just seen how Russia was readmitted to the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, and the Germans and the French were backing the Russians over that. So I think the British might be trying to reopen some kind of dialogue with the Russians. How far that will go, I have no idea. Not very far, I suspect.
Does Putin like me? Do you know, like?
No, I think.
I mean, the sense, obviously, you may not know,
Yeah.
but I
think Putin has no time for Theresa May whatsoever, and I think on top of everything else, he realizes that she's only going to be, she's not going to be around for more than a few weeks, and he's going to have to deal with Boris Johnson before very long. And I don't think Putin has much time for Boris Johnson either. though, as far as I know, they never actually met. I mean, Lavrov did meet Boris Johnson, and apparently it was an absolute howler of a summit. I mean, Lavrov just ate him up. I mean, it was just a disaster for Boris Johnson. But I mean, whatever. Putin's line is that he will always talk to anyone, and of course, Putin is going to talk to Erdogan. I mean, we know that because he's got lots of discussion with Erdogan.
Is Trump going to speak with Erdogan?
Yeah, I think he probably will. But I mean, Putin will certainly be talking to Erdogan, and they're going to be talking the S-400 deliveries, which are now apparently due to happen in July. He's also going to talk about Idlib. One thing he's not going to talk about with Erdogan is Erdogan's electoral defeat in Istanbul.
Right.
I mean, Putin never discusses those kind of questions with Erdogan, and I think Erdogan appreciates that, by the way. And no doubt Macron will be meeting all of these people. I don't think very much will come out of any of the meetings Macron has with Trump or with Xi or with Putin. But there we are. But I think those are the major meetings that we will see happen.
Big meetings. Big important couple of days.
It's going to be this G20 looks like it's going to be an important one. I mean, most G20s are just frankly, meetings of no real importance or relevance. But this one looks as if we're going to see some real diplomacy.
Absolutely. And it's coming at a very important time.
Absolutely.
It's a much needed G20, I think.
Yes, absolutely much needed. And not for the first time, Putin and the Russians are going to be the center of it, because everybody wants to talk to them, even if they pretend otherwise. So it's a strange thing, but though, of the three great powers, Russia, China, and the United States, Russia is the weakest. I mean, it's got the smallest economy, and the smallest military. Diplomatically,
they have the best diplomats.
They have the best diplomats.
There's no doubt about it. Yeah.
Exactly. They take diplomatic center stage. I mean, it's quite remarkable, actually. I mean, the extent to which they've managed to become the country at the center of it all. So an interesting G20, and we'll see what comes.
Okay, Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran, thank you very much. Guys, if you like this video, click on that subscribe button down below. Click on the notifications bell to make sure you get notifications every time we push out a new video. Please go to Soundcloud and follow us there. You can get an audio copy of this video. You can also listen to us on iTunes, and you can follow us there as well. You can also follow us on Instagram, the Duran_com. You can donate to us on PayPal, Patreon, and now Subscribestar. The links are in the description box down below. Go to our website, theduran.com, and you can also go to our eShop, where we sell all kinds of merchandise, clothes, mugs, stickers, Alexander. We have stickers now. We have stickers, Duran stickers.
Indeed.
And we have a really big collection of mugs. You have 2 there. You have a couple of more on the way. Alexander, the floor is yours. Because I love these mugs, if I may say so. I mean, I should tell you, I've got lots of mugs. I mean, not just Duran mugs, but I've got Emma Bridgewater mugs and mugs from Germany and all countries. But these are my these mugs now. The Duran mugs are the ones that are always at my desk, that I always drink out of, because firstly, they are beautiful to hold. They are beautiful to look at. I mean, they're marvelously made. They're solid. They have this one, which is my mug, has the Duran logo on it. I drink tea from it. The tea I'm drinking, by the way, I'm going to tell everybody about the teas I'm drinking from my mugs now, because I have a good collection of teas. This is the Kimun or Timun, if you use the Chinese pronunciation. It's a black tea, unusual for Chinese teas to be black, but it's the best Chinese black tea, in my opinion. It's some people drink it with milk. I don't. I find it's far too complex and interesting to be spoiled with milk. That's my own preference. And you need to drink it from a big mug like this one, because it's a big mug like this one that brings out all its complexity, all its wonderful aroma, all its fruitiness. It's a very fruity tea. It's quite a light tea. It's incredibly refreshing. Perfect tea to drink from a big mug like this on a day like this, which is rather muggy, as it often is in London. So when I work long and hard, and when I'm reading and tapping away on my computer, as I often do, or when I'm talking to Alex, I've got my
Duran mug next to me, drinking my tea from it, enlarging my mind, refreshing my spirit, making me able to do all of these things and to provide you with all the analysis that Alex and I work on together, and enlightening ourselves and enlightening our viewers. And if our viewers want to help us do that, they can do it by buying from our shop mugs like this, or mugs like this one, which my wife loves, which is the coat of arms of Moscow, which is also the double-headed eagle that looks in both directions, to the east and the west, as it does on our mug with our logo. And it's got, as I said, the dragon being killed by St. George, the dragon of untruth and lies and falsehood, which is what we fight. And she likes to drink hot chocolate from this, by the way.
Have you told your wife that it's a magic mug?
Of course I have. I would add that my wife is a very, very high-powered academic, an expert on D.H. Lawrence and on structuralism and post-structuralism and all these things. And so she needs a magic mug just as much as I do. So that's why she drinks from it. And if anybody wants to drink from a magic mug like this, they can help the Duran, and they can help themselves by buying it from our shop. And if they want the perfect outfit to wear whilst they're drinking from one of these mugs, well, we've got all these wonderful shirts like this long sleeve one that I'm wearing, 100% cotton, perfectly comfortable, perfect to wear outdoors and indoors. This particular shirt is with our logo there. You can see the double-headed eagle, beautifully embroidered, absolutely beautiful to see on a shirt like this. 100% cotton, beautifully dyed, beautifully stitched together, incredibly comfortable, very high quality. As I said, as somebody who used to buy, does buy very high quality clothes. I've always been a bit of a faux, clothes person, dapper. I mean, Savile Row tailors and all that. I can vouch for how good the clothes are. Our clothes are, our shirts are, and so can our viewers who bought them. The feedback we're getting on our stuff has been very good. So help the Duran, help yourself, buy yourself mugs like this, and more, as I said, that are coming my way. Buy some of our stickers, buy some of our great shirts.
Yeah, we have hats as well. We got to start showing a lot of the other merchandise. We'll get to that as well. We're really busy, but we'll get to that as well. We'll get some more merchandise to show our viewers because they love these segments so much. Even though some people they run long, but some people are like, we love them more and more. So I mean, whatever.
Absolutely.
Whatever. We'll do what we like. We enjoy it. We have fun with it.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. We have fun with it. I can show off my tea selection also. As I said, Ki-Moon is the tea I'm drinking.
So someone said that we should do a Duran tea. I wonder what kind of flavor would a Duran tea be? What kind of tea would that be?
Well, that's a very good question. I'll think about that. I think definitely refreshing and definitely invigorating. So that points, I would say, to a sort of probably not a green tea, not entirely a green tea, because I think it needs to be quite substantial, and most green teas I know are light. Maybe an oolong tea from Taiwan or something of that kind. There's one I know which is picked by monkeys. I actually have it, but something like that, because
I've heard of that. Is that true though? Is it really picked by monkeys?
Really? There actually is. I mean, most people think it's a myth.
Yeah, I think it's a myth.
There is one particular village where they still do it the old way, because the tree bushes grow on cliffs. And so only monkeys can reach them. But it's actually true. As I said, most monkey picked teas that you hear and read about are not actually picked by monkeys. But there is one village in China where that still happens.
Incredible. Okay, Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Thank you very much. Until next time, everybody, take care.